Hello and welcome to the Unique CPA with your host, Randy Crabtree. We're committed to creating a thriving community of accounting professionals who are physically and mentally healthy, fulfilled, and energized by their work. Our ultimate goal is to elevate the reputation of the accounting profession and vastly improve the lives of those in it. The Unique CPA is brought to you by Trimerit, the specialty tax professionals.
Today's guest is Alan Whitman. Alan is a repeat visitor to the Unique CPA. His first episode, probably about 22 or 23. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll reach back and look at that. But as you'll recall, Alan is the past chairman and CEO of Baker Tilly. And on today's episode, we're very excited. I'm very excited. We're going to discuss his new book, which is Break the Mold, with the subtitle of How to Achieve Transformational Change, Scale and Grow Simultaneously. Alan, welcome back to the Unique CPA.
Thanks, Randy. Really happy to be here. It's going to be fun to spend a couple of minutes with you. It's always is fun. And looking forward to sharing my thoughts on the book that's coming out soon.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because when you and I originally talked, you mentioned the phrase break the mold to me. I didn't know at that time you were turning this into a book, but that's pretty cool. So why don't you give us an idea, what is this book? What's it about? I mean, that's deep. Obviously, you can go on for an hour or more, but start with the summary and then we'll dig into certain aspects of the book.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. Look, the scaling and transformation of Baker Tilly is a great story. It took a lot of people, took a lot of trust, took a lot of people having blind faith, and it took a lot of reimagination of what CPA firms have been known to be, and that are slow moving, kind of looking out the rearview mirror and very slow to change. We did all of that, and we scaled and grew and transformed simultaneously. And look, there's a lot of great stories out there. Baker Tilly, one of them. Yet there's not a lot of books. A lot of people talking about it, putting sound bites together, but there's not a lot of books out there. And so I wanted to share the story. I wanted the things that we went through, the challenges that we had to overcome, the mistakes we made, the pain that it took, let's say, to be out there so that people can read about it. And this isn't for necessarily the large firms or the firms of Baker Tilly size. It's for everybody. It's for, frankly, every aspiring leader to think differently. How can you individually break the mold? I get asked that all the time by people that are not CEOs. What does that mean to me? And so I wanted to give people a real life account of what we did. And in the back of the book is a workbook of sorts of things you can do to quietly think about how do you transform to scale and grow a firm. So this is for everybody's benefit who don't get to talk to a lot of leaders that have led these transformations. You know, it's a pretty private brotherhood, sisterhood, if you will. And so this is an opportunity to share with as many people that are interested in learning how to, as I say, break the mold, reimagine the future.
I love that. And you and I talked about this on the first episode. I can recall that conversation. I didn't listen back to it, but I know we talked about things like that because I found it so refreshing that somebody who, built a $1.5 billion firm was looking to not do the Sally method and do things differently and reimagine the way a firm can run. And I know you and I have been fortunate enough to talk to you quite a few times since we first met. And honestly, I don't remember, 22 or 23.
Something like that, 23, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's always refreshing to hear what you say about this. And so let's go into some of those things you talked that the book is going to help people with. And just the pain points you went through, the mistakes, the challenges. Is there, before we even get there, let's look at the outline of the book. Is it broke down by like those sections, or where would we see a good summary of that?
Yeah. So if you think about the chapters, there's a chapter, of, okay, how did it all started? There's a chapter on building trust, because you're going to have trust if you're going to go on this long journey. You're going to have a lot of trust if you're going to go in an area you just don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah.
There's a chapter on, as I like to say, all roads lead to and from strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Many firms, they just accumulate clients, accumulate revenue, and they don't do it with a strategy. So all roads lead to and from strategy. There's a chapter on words matter. What you say and how you say it matter. And there's a ton of examples on words and phrases that I use to depict the future and progress versus change or upheaval or transformation. There's a chapter on building engines to do things with people, for people. And this is where some of my former colleagues didn't like what I said. despite people. Because at the end of the day, people are our biggest asset, and unfortunately, they're our biggest obstacle. We don't like to change. There's an entry in the book that says human nature is undefeated. Somebody I work with in a former gig of mine shared that with me. I thought it was brilliant. Human nature is undefeated. Human nature is just human nature, and it's really hard to change it. And so there's a chapter on building engines to do things with, for. So the organization is pushing itself forward versus it's not just a sum of the parts organization. It's a whole made up of its parts. There's a chapter on M&A, strategic M&A, not just accumulation M&A. There is a chapter, I couldn't finish the book without writing a chapter on PE, because that's the fun buzzword. And I take a different view on PE than some. And then there's a chapter on commonalities. What I've learned, Randy, since retiring from Baker Tilly, as I've worked with $30 million firms, $70 million firms. I was just talking just before this call with a $50 million firm, and the CEO was like, I think, Alan, we're too small for him. And it's like, no, because Baker Tilly was made up of $50 million firms.
Right.
If we did 21 or 22 deals during my tenure, the lion's share was between 20 and $50 million. So some say that's a small firm. I say it's a big company. It may be a small firm in the profession. So again, commonalities. Everybody is talking about the same stuff, dealing with the same stuff, which is why I thought, or I was convinced, or I am still convinced, that the principles in the book can apply to a $5 million firm, or a $500 million firm, or a $5 billion firm. And so those are the different chapters. And there's some others as well. There's a workbook in there at the end. Those are the chapters, the kind of the themes: strategy, words, language, engines, the trek towards maturity. How are you as a small firm versus how are you as a mature organization? I didn't say bigger, I said mature. So that's the roadmap of the book.
Okay, nice. So the book, obviously subtitled How to Achieve Transformational Change, Scale, and Grow Simultaneously. And one of the words you said at the beginning, we talked about chapters, was trust. Is trust one of the first things you think you need to build in when you're trying to do this transformational change? Or where does trust fall into this equation?
Oh, it's huge. It's a non-starter as much as strategy is. Look, when I became the CEO of Baker Tilly, we were transforming. My predecessor, Tim Christian, a GOAT in his own right, was building the firm, was acquiring a number of organizations, scaling it, accumulating things. And he had a group of partners that had built the firm from the past, and that was changing right before their eyes. And so they had their own issue of trust that the organization was changing from what they built to something new. You had people coming in that were promised something, and they got to the organization like, well, wait a minute, that's not what you told us the organization was like. He says, I know, he was like, I know, we're trying to move the organization. So we had kind of, I say warring camps, but we had two groups. And so I had to build trust. We had to build a bridge between the two, at least to connect us, and then build trust that it wasn't going to hurt. It was going to be painful. It was going to take a lot of focus and a lot of discipline, but they needed to trust the vision. They needed to trust the evangelizing I was doing. They needed to trust to get on the bus, so to speak. And so trust is enormous.
Yep.
In order to be able to successfully transform, not just grow an organization.
Yeah, so when I talk about trust, I think some of the things, so I love starting at a level of trust. Sometimes you have to earn the trust. But some of the things that I think when you're out there and you're doing this and you have this vision, or the whole organization has the vision, you're the leader of it. When you're talking trust, I mean, some of the key things I think is that you're intentional about cultivating trust. You have to be transparent in everything you're doing, because if people don't see the vision that you have, or it's top secret, and all of a sudden you're just saying, okay, here's where we're going next without any warning, that trust level is hard to maintain. But then also just vulnerability, like, hey, no, we're all in this together. I don't have all the answers. I need your help. And so, I mean, one, do you agree with those three? Are there additional ways that you can keep that trust level high?
Well, you used a really important word, and that's transparency. And then I'll add to that communication.
Yes.
You got to say the same thing over and over. You got to commit it to memory. You've got to be rote. You've got to have your isms, which throughout the book, you'll see I've got a number of isms, my way of communicating. And you got to be very, very deliberate in the communication. And then you've got to recognize, listen, you're not going to like everything. Frankly, I didn't like everything. We had to invest, and that was taking money out of my pocket, so to speak. And so you're not going to like everything. And I had a phrase you're not going to like this, and it's okay not to like it. I just ask that you respect it because we're doing it on behalf of the organization. At the end of the day, everybody was much better off financially than had they just sat where they were.
Right.
But it's okay. It is okay not to like it. And once you tell somebody they can dislike or even hate something, it kind of takes the air out of the balloon in the room. Like, oh, so there's no argument here. I'm like, no, there's no argument. I get it.
Right.
I remember one story, Randy, quickly. We were changing our retirement plan. Our retirement plan was as an equity-based plan. Then we went to an income-based plan, a multiple of earnings, compensation. And we were at like 3.5. And this is public. Everybody knew this. We were at 3.5 times earnings. And I said, listen, it's too rich. It's going to spiral. Even though Mercer every year said our model worked. Well, yeah, if the interest rate was this and the growth rate is this, you can mathematically calculate anything.
Right.
It's like going into an auto dealership and saying, I want to buy that car. Well, what payment do you want? Well, don't solve for the payment.
Right.
Solve for the purchase price, right? And so I remember I was sharing with the partners that we were going to change the retirement plan, and everybody had, we're a bunch of accountants. We had done our calculations. We had our spreadsheets. I said to the partners, I said, listen, I know you're not going to like this. I'm one of you. I don't like it either. And we need to do this to save ourselves $75 to $100 million. And once I took the air out of the balloon, it was like, yeah, I hate it, but it's the right thing to do. And so it passed unanimously. So look, I think that trust is one where people, even if you don't know where you're going, here's a quick story. I remember we did our strategy session in 2018. Great work. I said, listen, I want to be $1.5 billion by 2025. This was back in 2018. And the mathematicians of my leadership team, the two of them, went in the back room and they did all sorts of math. And they said, Alan, it is impossible for you to get to 1.5 billion by 2025 unless you do this, and you have to do it. And I said, fine, let's go. We're going to go do it. I don't exactly know how, but we're all going to do it together.
Yeah.
And we accomplished it 2 years early.
Nice.
Because everybody trusted that we don't have it all figured out and we're going to do it together. And I knew we had something special when people were ready to jump on the bus and we really didn't have that triptych to take us down to Florida. We were going to get there and head south, but we were going to have detours along the way.
Well, then I think that probably ties into it. I know one of your fun things to talk about, you enjoy a strategy. And so why don't we dig into strategy and how that plays into this transformation?
Yeah. To me, an organization needs to be a whole made up of its parts versus the sum of the parts, where every partner or every person has their book of business, my book, my client, and you just add it up at the end of the year.
Yep.
And that's by and large how smaller firms are.
Yep.
Because they're just racing to make a number, whatever the number is. I said, listen, if we're going to shift from being a vertical organization where everybody's doing their own thing to a horizontal organization where people are working across the organization, we needed a framework. We needed a strategy. And so we spent a lot of money with a very talented firm building a strategy. And that gave me the framework and us, not just me, us, the framework to make sure that people weren't off doing their own thing. No, we want you to build your plan, individual plan, to enable your practices strategy, which enables the firm strategy. It's the old phrase, discipline equals freedom. If we have the discipline to know that we're going to do this and not do everything, that actually gives people the freedom to explore because we know that we're executing plans to enable that strategy. Jocko Willink, I think it was out of the book, Extreme Ownership. He coined that phrase, discipline equals freedom. Now, a lot of people were like, well, kind of you're ruining my entrepreneurial spirit. This is not, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm giving us a framework so we know how to gauge each other. We know how to gauge what we're doing. And it enables us to make decisions, Randy, of what not to do. We can't do everything. I remember when I was thinking about how the firm was made up, and I asked finance to give me a spreadsheet or a picture of all of our service revenue. And we had two really tall, like bar graphs, tall bar graphs, audit, tax. And then we had all these other small little lines, 2 million, 5 million, 6 million, 12 million. And we were a large firm at the time. And I said, man, this is making me really, really nervous because we've got too long of a tail. We're doing too many things. We're not building scale. We're not building businesses within the business. We're building practices, partner practices.
Yeah.
And that's no way to build a $1.5 billion organization. And so I looked at that picture and it just dawned on me, we needed a strategy to enable us to build a few things, not everything. And it gave me kind of the rules of the road and gave everybody else the rules of the road of, okay, this is where we're headed and this is what we're going to achieve. And now build the plans to achieve that.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite episodes of the Unique CPA ever. Was one of the, I think, top, maybe it was fourth or fifth, where I talked to John Sensiba. I don't know. Do you know John at all?
I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah. And he talked like that. And, his firm's, it was at the time 14 million or something. And now it's over 100 million. But that was the same concept he had. And so to your point, this is not just for a $1.5 billion firm. They were a $14 million firm at the time and have grown because of that type of strategy. So I've seen it work in real life from that. I want to see how this ties into what you just said, because, hey, there's certain things we got to concentrate in these areas. You also have a newsletter, Break the Mold, same name. And I think was it this week where you talked about getting rid of the term cross-selling?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And so how does that play in? Because one, if everybody's not siloed doing their own thing, at least you're horizontal and everybody can see what the client needs. So how would cross-selling play into what you were just saying there? Or not cross-selling, because we're going to get rid of that term.
Right. Look, I don't think it's selling. When you bring in a client into the organization, your job is to solve their issues and deliver as many solutions to them. Not just the solutions that you do, but the solutions that Randy does and John and Sally and Sue, the entire organization, bring the entire organization to them. So to me, cross-sell, I don't see how that really fits. I understand the terminology, but it's just it never triggered with me. Look, I believe I've seen this, vertical organizations, my client or my book, my practice.
Right.
And early on, I said, we need to become a horizontal organization, like you said, and that is we need to work across the organization. Years gone by, when back in the 80s when I started, we did everything. We did federal, we did state, we did estate planning. Everything was much more simple than it is now. And now with specialists and what have you, you become more specialized to make it simple. And you need to realize that you are acting on behalf of the firm to solve a client's needs and to deliver solutions. And the only way you can do that is to work with the organization, with your colleagues. And so to me, this is less about cross-selling. This is about delivering value to a client by unloading the bus, so to speak, with them. And so, look, cross-sell, which has been the coined phrase, is nothing more than making sure you've got 3 or 4 services that you're offering to a client.
Right.
Because it's all about, it's frankly, Randy, about what they're getting rather than what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? We, in our profession, define ourselves by what we do. We're technicians. We're subject matter experts. Versus, and this is what was taught to me when we went through our strategy build back in 2018, you need to take an outside-in view. Outside-in client. What is the client getting? Not what are you doing? What is the client getting? The client is getting, value enhancement services, or they're getting peace of mind. Okay, well, then how do you do that? And if you keep your eye on the ball of what are they getting, that will keep you focused on saying, well, in order for me to execute the strategy of delivering peace of mind solutions to them, well, in order to do that, I've got to bring Randy in, I've got to bring Sally in, I've got to bring Barbara in, because I can't do it by myself. So that's where strategy and the ultimate mission of what your strategy says is so important. Don't just think about yourself as an auditor. I'll give you a quick example. I was helping a $70 million firm. They brought me in to help them design strategy. And one of their goals was to enhance the amount of advisory solutions they're going to bring to their clients. They wanted to break away from being basically compliance driven. And I was talking with a partner, very successful partner, who had built a book of business on what he can do, audits. And I just watched how his mindset shifted when he said, well, I can't deliver advisory services. I don't have the skills. So what you're telling me is I've got to bring all my partners in to work with me to bring those solutions to the client. Now, some of us would think that that's basic. But he had never thought of it that way, because he had defined himself as, I'm going to build a book of business for audit. But when he all of a sudden, the light bulb went on, he's like, well, this is a lot easier than I thought it was. I just got to bring my colleagues with me and they do the work. I get the benefit. It's a beautiful thing. I'm like, yes. And so people need to get out of their own suit, their own uniform, and bring in the team. Then you're delivering services versus cross-selling.
Yeah, I don't know if this is in the book, but you've just made me think of this, and I'm pretty sure we talked about this last time, but I can't help myself but bring it up again. Concentrating on what the client's getting, it to me starts thinking about what the value that you're giving to the client. You're giving them what they sometimes don't even know they need, but they'll see it when you go to it. But I have to bring up pricing. Then, you talk about that at all in the book or no?
I don't talk about pricing. It's a sensitive subject, as you can imagine.
Yep.
It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. But no, I didn't address it because I think it's a lose-lose chapter, frankly.
Oh, I know. It's a tough one, but it's things at some levels are changing on that. I think there are more and more firms are going away from the billable hour. And honestly, I think you and I have talked about this in the past. I think that is something that has to continue and we have to solve for that at some level. For me, that's what creates burnout in the profession, is just selling our time rather than selling the solutions or the value to the client.
Oh, without question. Look, I was having dinner with Mark Mandola. Mark was the U.S. managing partner of PwC under Tim Ryan. Mark and I would go to dinner 3 or 4 times a year, and it was uncanny how the things that he was dealing with a $20+ billion firm, the same things that I was dealing with a $1 billion firm. And he said to me, Alan, the firm that shifts from being a production firm to an outcomes firm will win.
Yeah.
And look, there's a lot of firms out there doing this. A lot of smaller startups, right? The subscription-based organization, tech-enabled.
Yep.
What's not happened is it's not been done at scale.
Nope.
And that's a huge challenge. And look, getting into having an investor and financial reporting makes it even more difficult because they have to understand pricing and volumes, et cetera. We'll get there. It's just going to take a lot longer than many of us want.
Yep. Well, maybe AI will help with that.
Maybe.
There'll be other ways to value what we're doing. All right. So we'll get off of hours. They're billable right now, even though that's a pet peeve of mine. And we'll move on to some things in the book then, because I was very intrigued what you said about words earlier and using the correct words. So can you expand on that for me?
Yeah. I mean, here's a great one. Why do we call it change management? Change depicts something happening to you. Why don't we call it progress management?
All right.
Progress management. I mean, it's so silly. Okay, here's another one. Staff. Why do we call people staff? They're not kitchen staff. They're not janitorial staff. And that's no disrespect to the kitchen staff. They're CPAs. They're 4-year degree people. Why aren't they just team members?
Right.
Well, I don't get why we use the word staff. Yeah. They're not my staff. They're a team and they've got a job and I have a job. Look, I don't ask the question any longer. Can I do this? Well, I might ask my wife, can I do something or another, because she has the veto power. But outside of that, here's a story. There's a lot of them in the book. Early on in my tenure as CEO, I had a managing partner meeting and we weren't growing very fast. We had lost our way with organic growth. That generated the idea of engines. And I can explain that if you're interested before we're done here today. I was with 15 or 20 managing partners. And I said, what will it take to grow at 10% organically? And they said, well, we can't. We're only at 3 or 4. I said, I didn't ask if we could, yes or no. I asked, what will it take? Well, we didn't know at the time. We didn't know. That question shift of not asking binary questions to asking open-ended questions generated so many new ways of doing things because people are challenged to come up with a solution. Tell me, is it $1 million? Is it $10 million? I don't care tell me what it will take. Even if it's going to be crazy, I'm not going to like it, or we're not going to like it, but at least then we know what the stakes are, what the investment is. And so words like that, I don't like the word but, either or, I like both and. And, it takes time to change your mindset and your vernacular, your lexicon, and they matter. They do matter. So there's a number of examples in the book of, if you're trying to take somebody on a journey that they're a little bit nervous about or they're uncertain about, what have you, words and your themes and your messaging, they matter. For instance, there wasn't a presentation or a gathering that I was a part of where I didn't remind everybody what the mission and the vision of the firm was. And I used to laugh at that. I'm like, he's just he's blowhard. He's just, I used to laugh at my leaders that did that. And then I realized, wait a minute, words do matter. The message does matter. It needs to resonate. You needed to hear it 7 or 8 times before you can commit it to memory. And so I do believe that the way you say things is extremely important. And some of them are simple and some of them might be corny. They matter.
Nope. I agree. My last keynote that I put together, I spent so long on was that the right word? Did I say that right? Is this really what I mean? So I'm no expert, but I agree completely and had somebody working with me on that. So that helped a lot. All right. So you mentioned we could go deeper into engines, and I do want to hear more about that.
So professional services firms are storied for individual partners or professionals doing everything, right? As my father used to say, they're the chief cook, they're the bottle washer, they're the maitre d', they do everything. And in today's day, you keep pushing, do more. You need to sell more. And, eventually it's like they can't. They run out of steam. They got to sleep. They got to take a break. And, oh, by the way, they got to do client work. And I remember we were struggling with growth because we were a individual contributor type organization. And we were the fastest growing firm. Baker Tilly was under Tim's leadership from 2000 to 2010. And then when the great financial crisis hit, we just, the spigot just turned off. We didn't know what to do. I remember talking to Joe Adams. Remember Joe Adams, right? He was, I think I mentioned him to you. He was 2 CEOs ago, maybe, of RSM.
Yeah.
And I marveled at how RSM was growing as fast as it was, being a large organization. And I asked him, he said, well, you get to be our size and you get to build engines that just do things regardless of what the people are doing when they sleep. And I'm like, wow, that is brilliant. It's complicated, not very complex, but it's complicated. And that's when I said, all right, we need to build something that does things with our people, for our people when their heads down, serving clients and what have you. And then in spite of people who don't want to sell. Because you get to be 700 million, 800 million, 900 million, you got to think about 10%, 70 million, 80 million, 100 million. And that's before you even count the work you lost. And so you need an engine. It reminds me of the generator we have behind the house that just keeps running and running, and you don't even know it's there. It's pretty quiet. And so we need to build the generator, the engine of organic growth to do things whereby the organization is pushing the people and pulling the people forward. Because at the end of the day, there's just only so much individuals can do. They can't work 24/7. And so you need data analytics, you need messaging, you need branding, you need SEO, you need all, data materials built for people, research done, knocking down the obstacles before you get into a meeting, all the things that go into promoting a company rather than the individuals just trying to promote themselves. And when we finally built the engine, we went from 4% growth, 3 to 4% growth to 12% organic growth because we were working together, and we were working together to achieve our strategy versus to try to achieve anything, which means we said no to a lot of things.
Yep. So the engine itself, a lot of it sounds like the behind the scenes marketing, or am I misreading?
Could be marketing, could be sales, could be tech enablement, could be, all the things that I need. I mean, as simple as, all right, give me a suspect list. Give me the research on these companies. Run the analogies between companies so I can see similarities. Go do the data for our clients that are similar to this one so I know what to go talk about. Yep. Build awareness. Somebody once said to me, it was Jeff Horine, a former partner of mine, said, you need to generate unaided recall. How do we generate unaided recall? When something comes up, oh, I should go to Baker Tilly for this. Or I should go to XYZ company for this because I've seen them. They've communicated with me. I know they can do this work. Unaided recall, brand awareness. Yep. So it could be marketing, could be branding, could be communication, it's a number of things.
Yep. And when you were just saying that, what I thought of is, okay, going from concentrating on, you had that long tail to we're really good at these certain things, I think probably assists in those engines being able to get that out there.
Without question. Without question. Randy, we even consolidated different practices. We said they were different because one focused on municipal advisory or state and local government, one real estate, and one, I don't know, healthcare. But the underlying service was the same. So we would consolidate them to build scale.
Yep.
We could have an external communication to the different industries, but we shouldn't be building 3 different practices. We should be building one business that has capabilities in this industry, that industry, and so on and so forth. And so that's the transformation, because as you know, you're in this business and you know how we think. The leader of that industry practice, and the leader of that industry practice said, well, I got to practice. I'm a practice leader. What do you mean you're going to consolidate us to, and there's going to be one leader? I'm different than them. No, you're not different than them. You're really not. You guys are all the same, and we need to build scale. And that's where people got, they got nervous, and they didn't like the fact that their, I guess, as you said, the cheese was moved.
Right.
But in order for the organization to scale at the high rate it was, we needed to reimagine how the organization operated, the practices operated, and how we delivered our message externally.
Nice. That's where strategy comes in then.
Exactly.
Nice. So before I want to get to a final, discussion of, what you expect people there, what you hope people to get out of the book. But before we go there, there's a couple other things you mentioned that were some chapters, and M&A, which has been happening for a long time in this profession, as long as I've been part of it. But then PE as well, which is actually happened a long time ago, but is very prevalent right now. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the chapters on that and what you talk about with M&A and PE.
Yeah. So M&A is a really interesting topic because it can be viewed as something to accumulate just more revenue or pins on a map. Or the way I view it, it can enable your strategy. Mm-hmm. And there's three legs of the M&A stool. One is geographic. And that doesn't mean you need to be everywhere in every one stoplight city, unless you've got a strategy to do that. And I think like CLA may have had that strategy to be everywhere. Okay, that's fine. The two is knowledge, that's industry. And the third is capability, that's service. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, sure, you want to acquire services to be able to deliver value to clients, right? You want to acquire knowledge to be able to deliver differentiated service to clients. The geographies are distribution channels. And that's really where the brand is also where the brand is known. So to me, it's strategic M&A. Look, I'll give you an example, and this is in the book. An MP of mine, when I was Baker Tilly's CEO, came to me and said, I want to acquire a firm. And we were already pretty large in that city. And I said to him, I'm like, well, why? He goes, well, we'll be fifth on the ranking tables. I'm like, why? I mean, for what? Well, we'll be fifth. That'll be better. I'm like, why? I said, unless you're able to grow faster or you're able to make more money, there's no reason to go buy that. It's expensive to buy it. And just grow it organically. And so the strategy just didn't, bigger isn't better, as my predecessor said, Tim, my mentor, Tim said, better is better. And so will this make you better, not just bigger? Now, in today's day, and we'll lean into the PE space, it's all about EBITDA, right? It's all about the financial aspect of this and EBITDA and multiples. So if you're able to buy EBITDA at a lower multiple, it could be very good financially. Don't know if it'll make you a better firm, but it'll certainly make you more EBITDA and the valuation could go up. So, there's a balance there. Look, I believe, shifting into PE for a second, I think PE or any external investor, PE, ESOP, family office, whatever it is, they are enablers. I've often said, I'm not so sure a mediocre to less than mediocre firm taking on PE is going to make them a better firm. It could make a good firm better, could. But at the end of the day, they're investors. They're external investors. They've got a lot of resources. They've got a lot of subject matter expertise. They are investors. And I believe the biggest shift that people need to realize when taking on an outsider is the lifestyle business is gone. Because a lifestyle business, it's not about having a lake home or having an extra car or anything. It's about good enough is good enough. You run through a year, you achieve what you want to achieve or what you achieved. And you're like, we didn't meet the numbers we wanted to. It was good enough. We had some headwinds. We'll try again next year. And now I'm not saying that bad things happen if you don't make your numbers, but it's much more intense to achieve a financial result or a strategic result when you have a third party inside the henhouse, right? And so to me, the lifestyle business aspect of the CPA world is vanishing because we're becoming professionalized organizations. I'm not suggesting that's a good thing or a bad thing. I believe it's a good thing, regardless of whether it's outside investors are in our space, because whether we admitted it or not, we were building businesses, not just building practices.
Yeah, we didn't know that, though, often.
We didn't. No, you're right. And now it's coming to light. It's like, oh, my gosh, I was just on the phone with a $50 million firm that's going to go to market in January. And I said that's your biggest challenge. You won't be able to be a lifestyle firm anymore. You'll be a business and you'll be building businesses within the business. Interestingly, Baker Tilly got that. We understood that and we executed very well. The team executed very well. Now, I'm sure that Hellman and Friedman, or their current sponsor, took them to a whole new level. Yet we had already adopted that business mindset,
Nice.
which enabled us to scale really, really fast, faster than most other firms. I think it's a good thing. I think maturing organizations is good. Whether these firms are ultimately succeed or not, I think a lot of them will. I think some won't. But guess what? That's going to happen whether PE was in the space or not. There have been a number of firms that have not made it,
Yep.
or that have decided to merge up, or that decided to disband. That had been going on gradually over decades. We just didn't focus on it.
Right.
But now, so I guess my message to the listeners is PE isn't the culprit. It's people's willingness to transform themselves if something doesn't work out. It's not the investor.
Yep. Change is scary for most people.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So we went through a lot of the aspects of the book and what's going on, but I think I want to kind of wrap it up with the workbook, because the workbook's obviously going to walk somebody through these processes to get to where they want to be. So give us a summary, or not even a summary. You can go as deep as you want on what the workbook is.
Well, if you think about the chapters that I outlined earlier, trust and all roads lead to and from strategy, words matter. There's a part of the workbook that associates with, okay, what's a workshop or a session to dive deeper in each of the chapters. One of the chapters I didn't mention, and shame on me, was the importance of building effective leadership teams. I spent a lot of time on that at Baker Tilly, and a lot of time we go very, very deep in what that means and objectors to progress, et cetera. And so there's a part on that. There's a part on M&A. There's a part on strategy. So each of the chapters has a corresponding exercise, if you will, questions to ask, things to think about, which is what I'm using now with firms that I'm advising, their leadership teams and the broader, I guess, their core leadership or their senior leadership and their broader leadership, to actually take them through, okay, well, because they're asked, well, now what do we do? All right, well, let's pull one thing out of the workbook and let's do it. Let's ask some questions of what will it take? What will it take for us to be a horizontal company? What will it take for you not to be P&L driven? What will it take for us to take a external view on outside in view? I mean, really, it's the old adage of young kids ask why. You say something why. You say something why. What will it take? Because here, I've got a company that I'm advising. We're a little short on growth. We're growing nicely year over year, but we're short on our financial plan. And I said, so what are we going to do? What's it going to take? And the answer was, well, we got to sell more work. I'm like, well, that's not the answer. The answer is, what are we going to do where results result, where we generate more revenue? Well, we're going to convert our pipeline. What are we going to do to convert our pipeline? And so you really got to get down very granular.
Right.
You got to go down a few floors in the basement to really think about, okay, wow. Okay, so we need to do this. Yes. You need to do that. Oh, that's going to be hard. Yeah, it is. But at least you know now. And so there's a variety of things. M&A, there's a part in M&A, there's a part in people development and leadership development, team development in there. And so they're practical, not tricks, but they're practical sessions and exploratory sessions that you can use to experience the first 11 chapters in the book.
Yeah, so that brings up a question to me. So when you look at the book and you look at the workbook now and you look at all the different aspects of what you did when you did this growth with Baker Tilly and what you want to help people do if they're looking to do this transformative change in their organization, is this a step-by-step, or can we go, hey, this is what we need help with now. Let's go to this part of the workbook and this chapter and let's integrate this. Do you envision one way or the other?
Yeah, look. What's that phrase? You eat at something one bite at a time, right? You can't just do everything at once. Yeah. And we were on an 8-year journey, and I had been in the organization for a long time and realized that we needed to transform a number of things. I share the entire story with my audiences. Mostly, it's the biggest shift is going from a vertical organization to a horizontal organization, meaning you're not the sum of the parts anymore. You're a whole made up of the parts. That's one. And two, really three things. That's one. Two is all roads lead to and from strategy. What does that really mean? And the third is M&A. What does M&A really mean? And understanding, and it's really the decision, M&A, PE, merge up, because people, they can't get that out of their head. They really want to study that. company I was working with was like, we're adamantly against this. We're going to do it ourselves. And well, how do you know? Well, I trust my partners. We will grow at 10%. I said to them, I said, well, John, you're not growing at 10% today, this year. So what's going to change next year? He said, well, I know we can. Okay. All right. And look, I don't force it, but we were not allowed to talk about PE. And at the last session, one of the most cautious guys in the room looked at me and says, so do you think we're crazy for not considering PE? And I'm like, Joe, no, I don't think you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy. You need to consider all these other things because they're here, whether you know them or not. And so again, it's vertical to horizontal. It's strategy, of course, the engines. Look, we invested a lot of money in coaching and external facilitation that a lot of people just don't have the stomach for.
No, so I knew you did that. Yep.
Yeah, the effective team thing. In fact, you talked to the woman, I don't know if you've spoken with her, you talked to Lori, or you were going to talk to Lori Zukin, who led it. She was instrumental in what we became and how we work together. It's expensive.
Yeah.
And it's nerve-wracking because you really got to peel back the layers of the personal onion, so to speak, to understand who you are and where you want to go.
Yeah, but I think it's important. I think it's something that's completely ignored in a lot of organizations, if not most. So I applaud you for what you did. And yes, Lori and I talked recently, and actually we recorded an episode of the show, which will be out probably in the next month or so. So she'll talk a little about what she did with you. So
I figured, knowing who you are and what matters to you, you would enjoy meeting her.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the introduction. Well, Alan, this has been great. I'm really looking forward to digging deeper into the book. I didn't get to do that before we talked, so now I got educated. Now I got more excited, so we get to spend some time on it. But before we wrap up, and we talked about this last time you were on the show, I love talking about the fact that, you are more than just what you do in the office. And so when you're not in the office, what do you do for fun? What's your outside of work passions?
Thank you. We're huge water people, so we're boaters. In the summers, we're up in the Great Lakes, up here in Detroit. And as of Monday, we'll be down in Florida, so we'll be in saltwater. We live in Florida in the winters. I just had a wonderful week in France with my love of my life, Kim. We ate great food and drank. We love wine, so we collect wine. And I now have a new hobby, and that is visiting my adult daughter in New York City. She's working there. So I'm going to actually take my adult daughter out to dinner Wednesday night when I'm in New York for a board meeting. But it's mostly we're on the water.
Nice.
With all of our toys and on our boats, and we enjoy the water. It's very, very rejuvenating.
Well, we're going to have to get together and have a glass of wine one of these days, because I am no expert, but I belong to a lot of wineries. So I'm starting to understand wine a little bit better, not mainly, all California. So if you know your French wine, I'll have to learn something from you on that.
We had wonderful French wine this past week. So it was nice. It was a joy.
Well, Alan, thanks for being a repeat guest on the Unique CPA, and we will have in the show notes where people can get the book and get contacting with you, which we had on the last episode. So I'm assuming LinkedIn is probably a good place for people to look.
If you want to know what I stand for, just go to LinkedIn. It's all out there.
There you go. Well, again, thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unique CPA. You can find the show notes for today's episode and learn more about TriMerit at theuniquecpa.com. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app. And join us next time for more expertise and insights on the Unique CPA. Professionalproductions.net